Good Yontif. Shabbat Shalom. Way back in the 5750s, before the turn of the 21st century, in the 1990s, a child of Jewish immigrants, from Poland, chasing the dream of all musicians, moves here to Nashville, Tennessee. He was looking to lay down some roots. His parents raised him right, so he joins a wonderful local congregation. Back then, it was newly built, a beautiful edifice, designed by a well-known contemporary architect. It was a far cry from his parents' old shul in New York, or the synagogue they belonged to in Pinsk, Poland, where they were originally from. Some time passes, and the High Holy Days are approaching. And he thinks, wouldn't it be nice if we could all be together for the holidays? So he calls his parents, and they seem less than enthusiastic. They like their shul, their rabbi, their friends. Undaunted, the guy decides he'll fly his parents in for a visit. Surely, once they see how beautiful this campus is, they'll change their minds and want to be here. So he picks him up, he drives him straight here to Micah. And he shows them the beautiful sanctuary, and the preschool, the cemetery. And there are many oohs and ahs. And still he senses that something is wrong. So he asks, "Nu, what do you think?" And this was their response. "It's very nice, son." Nice. He presses on. "So will you come back and be with me for the holidays?" And they look at him, and after this long pause, his father blurts out, "We agree it looks lovely, but can we cry here?" And the son asks, "Can we cry here?" And the dad says, "Can we open up? Let our true emotions flow. Can we admit our frustrations and our disappointments? Share our failings and our feelings." The High Holy Days, they serve as a kind of catharsis, an opportunity to let go of our tightly wound self-control and open up. Can you cry here? Yes, almost all of us do. My mom is already crying and I'm just getting started. This question speaks right to the heart of what this sacred time on our Jewish calendar is all about. The stark recognition of our humanity, our fragility, our limits in the face of the infinite. Every time that I stand before this community, I feel as vulnerable as the first time. Will I be inspiring enough that you will come back tomorrow morning? I don't want to offend anyone. Will I make a mistake and then have it go viral on the internet? And when I have to deliver a eulogy at a funeral for someone that I also loved, how vulnerable it is standing up here before you all. Every time there's this fear, we all have it in public speaking, that I won't be able to hold it together. So the first chief rabbi of Israel, Rabbi Abraham Isaac Kook, alav hashalom, may he rest in peace, he preached that it was our responsibility to identify the latent qualities within all feelings, to identify them and to utilize them in their proper time. These holy days are dedicated to harnessing our feelings and our fears and voicing our vulnerabilities to God and to each other. When we hear the word vulnerable at first, we're likely to think of people who have a greater risk of contracting COVID, or of quarterbacks like Ryan Tannehill with questionable offensive lines. Jewish history, especially in the shadow of the Holocaust, and local human experience both teach us that a wise person is not vulnerable in all situations. Every morning on this campus and in preschools throughout the world, parents leave behind the most precious thing they have, their children. So I'm not talking this evening about the physicality of how we felt after that Covenant shooting, which took place just down the road, a short drive in Green Hills, or what residents of Sderot, Israel must feel every time they run for a bomb shelter. That's a physical vulnerability, but the feelings are similar. Anytime we step outside of our comfort zones into the unfamiliar, our hearts, they speed up, they race a little bit, and maybe our palms, they grow a little sweaty. So what I'm asking is that we expand our definition to include emotional vulnerability, which invites its own fear of biblical proportions. Vayinashek lechol echav vayivch alechem. And Joseph from the Bible kissed all his brothers and wept with him. Ve'achar ken dibru echav ito. And then only afterwards were his brothers able to talk to him. True relationship, authentic connection, requires lowering our emotional armor. So I will take another piece off. In a flash, my toddlers have transitioned into adults. Rabbi Lori is coming to the grips with the fact that she is no longer the CEO of their lives. She's still the CFO, don't worry. Me, I feel like I'm not even on the board of directors. Like, decisions are made without me. I'm an advisor at best. I don't miss tripping over the backpacks or cleaning up spills inside the fridge. I don't miss the loads of laundry. My boys were not the best roommates, but their departure to college has left a hole inside of me, a void that is yet to be filled, and I am struggling. I need to let them live their own lives. I know this. Make their own mistakes. I can't save them anymore. I'm not sure I ever could. And I know I shouldn't try. Overcoming struggle is a necessary lesson to launch into adulthood, to succeed in life. So many of the obstacles that I faced in my life inevitably were valuable learning lessons. It's just taking longer for me to figure out this new normal. I find myself searching for greater purpose again. Periods of transition, they reveal those kinds of vulnerabilities. I'm trying to embrace this new period as a time of self-discovery, and I'm focusing on the possibilities, not the loss. I know the feelings are normal, and my friends and my family, they've been incredibly supportive, but it's hard. It's much harder than I thought it would be. We live in a culture out there that values strength. When we're aware of our own flaws, and we all have flaws, we tend not to want to expose them. That's the world's way. That's not the Jewish way. The more we hide our weaknesses, the less we can address them. The more we project only strength, the less capable we are of making sympathetic connections with other people in their weaknesses. On Yom Kippur, we recite these long lists, and like Cantor Josh pointed out, they're communal confessions, because everybody's guilty of something. And our tradition doesn't want us to be alone in our vulnerability. So we offer this communal cry, the sounds of our souls in pain, seeking absolution. Let us search and examine our ways and turn back towards the sacred, says the Book of Lamentations. Nisa levavenu el kapayim el bashamayim. We shall lift up our hearts and our hands to God in the heavens. Imagine pieces of our broken hearts held high in our hands. A gift for God, our innermost feelings. Look, God, see our pain? See these fragments? These emotional shards? These pieces of our hearts? We're showing them to you, Avinu Malkeinu, so that you'll have pity and compassion on us. The trouble is that when we are in pain, personally or collectively, we can cry out to heaven for divine assistance, and we can turn to each other for guidance and for support, but we still have to struggle profoundly with how to manage the pain and how to grow from it. I'm going to try some Yiddish. Dr. Bob Smith helped me practice. Darfung is was mir rufen. Experience is what we call the accumulation von under mistakes, the accumulation of our mistakes. Why are we all so afraid of the struggle? When my daughter was an infant, I'm sorry, Eden, I know you don't like to be the star in this show. You're just the best Torah I got. When Eden was learning to walk, she would get up from her crawl, and she would toddle a little bit, and then she would fall down. And she would look around to see if I was watching, to see if it was worth crying. And if she didn't see me, and she hadn't hit her head or something, usually with grit and often a smile, she got up and tried again. How and when do so many of us lose that intrinsic drive to embrace struggle? With a smile, no less. Where is all the resilience we had when we were infants? Are you still the kind of person who seizes opportunities to learn from falling down? Neuroscientists have concluded that our brains develop when we make a mistake. It's how we create new neural pathways. When we learn a new idea, as opposed to something that confirms that we already know, we open a pathway in our minds. And the more you grapple, the deeper you learn, the stronger the pathway becomes. Consequently, the best way to learn is through making mistakes and correcting them. And part of the emotional armor we wear is because we believe people won't accept us as imperfect. They won't like us. Everyone has something about ourselves that we worry if other people knew, they just wouldn't want to be associated with us. We think we're too heavy or not smart enough or not wealthy enough. And so we avoid these situations where we can be critiqued or judged, and we miss out. These next 10 days are dedicated to struggle and growth. Think of them as an exercise in promoting brain health, like Sudoku. You strengthen your neural pathways through learning from last year's mistakes. And the process, it helps us become the people we aspire to be. Judaism is a religion that brims with expectation and idealism, and individuals are called upon to put their best effort forward to better themselves in the surrounding environment. And it only works if you're willing to risk, in the safety of this spiritual community, which has as one of its founding principles inclusivity, expressing your vulnerabilities. In here, we strive and we stumble and we mourn and we share and we laugh and we cry. We construct a collective vision of the world as it should be, and we practice in here in order to effectively change the world out there. I'm not actually sure we're doing a very good job. Our tradition reminds us time and again about the importance of protecting the vulnerable, the environment, the poor, the widow, the orphan, the stranger. What do we got? We got global warming. We got teachers and firefighters and blue-collar workers who can't afford to live in our city. We've got children in Tennessee's protective services, as it's called, sleeping in offices. Over and over, we are told not to oppress the stranger, the immigrant, that it is, quote from the Bible, a ruthless nation that shows the vulnerable no mercy. If we expect more compassion from our leaders, and we want aspirational thinkers to emerge from among us, we must first identify that struggles and mistakes are not indicative of incapacity. We become better through our willingness to attempt to become great. And so often, we only see the victory, not the struggle. But struggles are normal, and authentic achievement does not come without failure along the way. Those who first fail can eventually succeed. I cannot speak in this modern day and age about vulnerability without mentioning one of its leading research pioneers, Dr. Brené Brown. I'm sure some of you are already fans. She's fond of saying vulnerability sounds like truth and it feels like courage. She teaches that admitting our vulnerabilities, learning to live with uncertainty and risk, emotional exposure, that's what letting God in is. Most of us are inclined to hide those shortcomings. And then along comes these holy days and their emphasis on Jewish prayer. Prayer is an admission of imperfection. In its most simple technical sense, praying is centered around us requesting that which we do not have. Peace, unity, redemption, health. Things we aspire to and we beseech God for. And God answers, "Be holy, for I am holy." So Judaism provides us a season in which we are challenged to be holy enough to find the courage to be imperfect. Almost all capable people are terribly afraid of being perceived as ridiculous. And they're miserable because of it. So your homework this week is to finish the sentence. Vulnerability for me is. Here are some of the responses Brené Brown received. Vulnerability for me is sharing an unpopular opinion, standing up for myself, asking for help, starting my own business, initiating sex with my spouse, calling a friend whose child died, falling in love. Vulnerability is letting your emotions show, and so many of us, I will include myself, find that difficult to do. Because society out there gives us these rules about how and when to express these emotions. We don't play by those rules in here. I'll say it again, we practice in here in order to effectively change the world out there, where the most vulnerable need us. Micah is actually a place where everyone is vulnerable, whether we admit it or not. For some, that vulnerability comes from discomfort with this service. Maybe it's because you don't know any Hebrew, or you weren't raised Jewish, or maybe you just have issues of faith. We all have that. The greatest theologians of all time have had that. Why shouldn't you? Here at Micah, inclusivity means that we create this sacred space where everyone is welcome, escaping the judgments as we explore our own fears of the unfamiliar. And what scares us is sometimes actually really good for us, if we can stomach sitting with it. Because Judaism has the potential to transform those fears and those vulnerabilities into joy. You want to know how, right? Uncertainty and risk and emotional exposure, these unstable feelings we get when we step outside of our comfort zones, when we do something that forces us to loosen control, they are certainly present in those small moments that pop up when we share our feelings with other people and when we ask for forgiveness. And if you run away, the second those shaky feelings arise, you're just reinforcing that voice in your head that says, "I'm not good enough." So here at Micah, we encourage people not to avoid situations that make them feel fragile. We present ourselves to others as people who are aware of and comfortable with the fact that attempts to succeed are often inseparable from the failures to get there. Because most of us tend to be intimidated by people who disguise themselves with the appearance of perfection. We find it difficult to develop a true emotional connection with them. Admitting personal struggle closes the gap. It reveals a certain common ground. There is this almost messianic quality to a community like Micah, in which individuals are able to admit to each other that they have stumbled through life, that things have not been easy for them, that they have fallen down, learned, and made mistakes. And once you feel comfortable opening up in here, it sets the stage for greater empathy out there. And suddenly, authentic connections, they abound. Because connecting to others, that's what makes life worth living. Affirming the normalcy of life's difficulties helps build the sensitivity we at Micah need to more effectively impact our own lives, that of our community, our city, our country, and our world. So that young man, the musician who was originally from Pinsk, Poland, he's not so young anymore, but his parents did eventually make it here to Micah for the holy days. And after the service, his father pointed to that disco ball that's still hanging in our social hall and was like, "New, what's that?" And the young man explains that's from when the congregation first started and it rented space in a former disco in Bellevue. To which the father said, "Hundreds of pieces of broken shards held together to form a magical ball of light. We are all broken, my son. Together we shine more brightly." The mystics taught that the world is held in place by the glue of small interactions of goodness, compassion shown to strangers at the time of their vulnerability. So this weekend, do one small act of kindness for someone you don't know. And this week, risk being yourself, flaws and all, in the comfort of an inclusive spiritual community, so inclusive that we'll do our best not to judge. This year, transform your fears into joy. From the very bottom of my heart, on behalf of each and every one of you here and all those watching, all of us that comprise the tapestry that is Congregation Micah, I want to wish you a Shana Tova Tikatevu. May our faith this year be sealed for all good things. In gratitude for the privilege of reaching this sacred season and for the holiness which it brings to our lives,